Three, two, one. We are live. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for tuning in. It is June 26th, 2024. First and foremost, I want to apologize. It sounds like my neighbors over here to the left are getting their lawn done this morning. So if at any point in time in between discussion you hear, I'm not sure if you're picking it up right now. So I apologize for that little bit of noise disturbance in the background. Two, just want to put that out there. Today's kind of a special day here on the Weather Center. June 26th, 2012 was the day many, many moons ago, over a decade ago now. It's hard to believe, where I initially enlisted in the United States Air Force as a weather forecaster. So that's what more or less started my professional journey in the weather career field. It was June 26th, 2012, where I woke up at 4:45 in the morning getting screamed at. People were getting flipped out of their beds and their cots and all that because we were in the middle of boot camp. So today's a sentimental day. It's 12 years since that day. I honestly can't think of a better way to figuratively ring in my anniversary with you guys than talking some pretty spectacular tropical updates. That's another thing I want to get out there right along the immediate, like as soon as we get into this. We're going to skip introductions. I apologize. We're going to skip all the semantics. We're going to get right into it. I need you guys to smash. We're not nudging it. We're going to be blasting that like button. I need you guys to hit that like. We've been doing great with these videos, getting traction. We're getting a lot of views, a lot of new folks, and right now it is critical. We're not fully into all hands on deck, but we're getting close. There's a lot of things that I want to show you guys this morning that are actually, a lot of us are a little on edge, to tell you the truth, and I'll openly admit, some of you are probably going to get upset in the comments. I sincerely apologize if anything comes off as a little bit, I'm not going to use the H word, but it's going to be very difficult to not kind of go that route. It's going to be very difficult to make it seem realistic with all the different trends and the updates that we've had over the last 36 hours. So let's just jump right into it. Thank you very much for the congratulations in the chat, everybody. As you can see, our forecast is more or less unfolding. We're here getting started on the National Hurricane Center homepage. This is our morning tropical weather outlook. We still have Invest 94L at a 10-20 split, 10% chance of formation over the next 48 hours, and then a 20% chance over the next 7 days. This could potentially start going up over the next day or two as this thing can work its way out of the Central Caribbean. The Central Caribbean is going to be a pivotal area of responsibility or geographic point that we're going to be discussing throughout the duration of this update. So just kind of keep in mind where I have this little black box, this vector drawn here on the Caribbean Sea geographic area. Once it can move in and out of this area, that's when the Ensemble members on the Euro, the GFS, the Canadian, you name it, all of our models are on board with both of these features rapidly spinning up once they get into a bit more of a favorable environment. So I think once we get into the Western Caribbean, just to the south or southwest of our Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, prepare. You're going to have some thunderstorm activity and maybe a little bit of an increase in your surface winds as this puppy works its way off to your immediate south. That I'm expecting it to go up over the next couple of tropical weather updates. This is what I really want us to pay close attention to. There's a lot of folks who are honestly at this point mentioning throw the euro away because it's almost just ridiculous what we're seeing out of it right now. And I'll show you guys. Like I said, it's going to be difficult to not sound like we're just getting excited. It's true. I'm going to present to you guys the evidence, and you're going to have to do with it as you please. But as I've mentioned before, Lesser Antilles, U.S. British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, you guys need to be wide awake watching this update and those after. That's why I need you guys to nudge, smash, just blow up the like button if you can, please. Our secondary disturbance is at an 0 for 30 split, 0% chance over the next 48 hours, which will probably be changing. Truthfully, 30% chance over the next 7 days. I would not be surprised if we get an orange over the next 12 to 24 hours, if not 12 to 18 hours with this, just based on what we're seeing, all right? Here's a look at our GO satellite. You can see, thanks to the diurnal minimum and our trade wind impacts out there, you can kind of see that there is what looks to be a bit of westerly wind shear over our tropical wave axes right there. That's kind of why I wanted to bring up that Central Caribbean so much, for the sake of these upcoming waves back here over the MDR. There's a lot of folks who are just fully cemented, like they're locking in their forecasts that whatever happens, it's going to plow in through the Lesser Antilles. The Lesser Antilles are going to get something from this, and then it's going to die. I am looking at both sides of the spectrum here. There's too much ensemble agreement that we really should just pay attention to this all the way through. Watch it now, watch it real time, watch it and talk about it after the fact, okay? This is going to continue to transition up towards the west-northwest, and it's right about this point and on where we could see it finally get a bit more consolidated. We'll have to see what the diurnal maximum does for this afternoon today if we get a nice little bubble of convective flare-up. And then we have these two guys back here, and these two guys are causing a whole lot of ruckus on the socials all across the spectrum. Let me show you why. First and foremost, here's a quick glance at Invest 94L. You can see that in recent hours, GFS not too hard sold on it, kind of taking it up towards the west-northwest. We've seen a bit of a northwestward bias in some of our ensembles, and you'll see that the euro is kind of in agreement with what the Canadian ensembles here for 97 or 94L, excuse me, what 94L is doing, kind of bringing it up just a little bit further towards the north. So we still want to pay close attention to this, even though this isn't personally the main event. This could, at the very maximum, a ceiling for this feature, be more of like another tropical storm Alberto, possibly bringing some heavy rainfall, some increased thunderstorms, surf, surge, rip currents for the southeast coast of Texas. Let me go back out, and you can see the intensity models are not doing too. Actually, we're in between intensity models. Oh, there we go. Actually, there's our new intensity. Wow. Okay, so see, I'm telling you, I don't, there's things popping up all of a sudden. If I go back and show you the previous intensity model guidance, it's not there anymore. We must have just gotten some new information. This is brand spanking new. So you can kind of see that initially we were thinking this was going to stay out of tropical storm territory until maybe we get into the Western Caribbean. This is about the Western Caribbean, Bay of Campeche point in time, about 96 to 120 hours out. And then if you switch over to 12Z, 12Z's up and coming. We now have our Category 1 index on there. Obviously, just don't pay any attention to that. Not going to have enough time for this thing to go up into Category 1 strength. But notice that we suddenly, at about the 3 to 4 day mark, we're going up. And that's more or less been what's identified on our ensembles and our other probabilities on our other operational models. So that's an interesting trend. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. I have Windy pulled up so we can identify all the players on the board. So first and foremost, we're looking at the surface level. I actually have 2 levels pulled up, and there's a reason for it. I'll show you in a second. So this is our first area, our first wave, and you can see that there isn't too much closure to it just yet. But notice that our winds begin to relax, and we have a nice area of high pressure over the Florida Keys, Cuba, the Cayman Islands, the Yucatan Peninsula that is going to drive this thing up towards the north. Now, what some of the long-range models are thinking, or the mid-range, I should say, we're close enough now, is this is going to get a friendly nudge from a front coming down across the United States that sparked our Midwest, Appalachian, Ohio, Mississippi Valley severe weather. So that's going to be bugged off towards the east, allowing this to maybe come up just a little bit further towards the north. Nothing to be alarmed with just yet, just something we're paying attention to. These are our 2 areas of influence out there. We actually have a couple of different small spins. Let me move my head out of the way because I'm blocking it once again. So we have this area right here, a very small but consolidated spin right on our convergence zone, and then another one back behind it that does have a little bit more cyclonic curvature. Looks like it's trying to lift from our ITCZ just a little bit faster. These are our 2 other players on the field. We have 94L over here, and then we have our 2 disturbances that we want to pay close attention to out over the MDR. And forgive me if I'm blasting through this very quickly. I just want to get to the meat and potatoes of this, and so I'm not wasting anyone's time. Reason I have 850 millibar flow up is so I can show you this steering. So if you notice, in the Caribbean, right about where I had drawn my vector on the National Hurricane Center homepage, we see a rapid increase in our Caribbean trade winds. This is what everybody and their mother is banking on is going to stop anything from happening. Even though we have a tremendous amount of different ensemble solutions, different operational agreement, there's a ton of different things on the board right now. It's very interesting. It's very chaotic, to tell you the truth. A lot of folks are thinking right there where I have my black lines drawn, that is going to seal the deal for everything. At the end of the day, folks are really thinking that nothing's going to happen, at least as we get beyond the Eastern Caribbean. This is our overall pattern. You can see a very dominant anticyclone across the Atlantic. You can see a little bit of our westerly winds off the United States. It's going to help to kind of bump our surface high down here, the very weak western extent of our anticyclone off towards the east, and that's what might allow this to spill up further to the north. We're still speculating on that. We'll definitely have to wait and see. Lucine, excellent question. Anything dangerous weather coming towards Antigua, Barbuda? I would definitely, I'm not going to say dangerous, but you do have some enhanced weather coming your way. That's for sure. You do have some enhanced coming your way. So here's a look at our 0Z ensembles from the European model this morning, and this is where it gets a little difficult, to tell you the truth. The reason I say difficult is if we were to go back to yesterday, actually, I don't even know how to go back yesterday. We'll look at it on weathermodels.com. It'll be a little easier for things to kind of come into agreement here. For things to go run to run, we can examine it. But this is our 0Z ensembles for the European model. And you can see 100% agreement. Lesser Antilles are going to see someone. Lucine, Samuel, that's why I answered your question with try to keep your head on a swivel. Watch to your east, because all our models are definitely in unison that if there's going to be some pretty decent development, you guys are going to see it first. You're on the front lines, like I've been mentioning, for sure. And then from there, pretty much in agreement with what we've been discussing on this channel, guys. And I'm not trying to gloat. I promise I'm not doing that, but it's kind of spooky. I even told my buddy James on X that it's a little spooky. We're seeing things that we'd been talking about even like late last year. If you guys remember, I had mentioned to you guys, for my long-term viewers, I'd mentioned that where I'm going to, and you guys can check me, you can go way back if you have the time and you want to argue, go way back in time. And remember, I said, based on the patterns that we're looking at, where I really want us to pay close attention to development this year is in this general area. We got to watch for our Lesser Antilles this hurricane season. It's going to be somewhere in the Western MDR, the Eastern Caribbean, I do think is going to be a hot spot this hurricane season. On top of that, I've been mentioning that the Lesser Antilles are going to be on the front lines of whatever comes out of the MDR at least 60-70% of the time, and here we are. We're only into late June, and we're already starting to see signals of that. The GFS model at 0Z kind of echoes the same sentiments. We only have 1, 2, 3 members that take it at least shortly off to the northeast of our Lesser Antilles, providing you with much lesser impacts. But again, we're looking at 85% of our ensembles, maybe even arguing 90% of the ensembles on the GFS even, pushing it right through you guys. And as we saw with Brett and Cindy last year, it is not unrealistic for that to take place. I'm fairly confident in whatever happens out here in the MDR, the Lesser Antilles are definitely going to see it. I'm going to keep my forecast at 100%. You're going to feel something with it. And then from there, right at about that 65, 70-degree latitude line or longitude line, like I've been saying, we get very, very diffuse. GFS still thinks we could see a developing cyclone that gets kicked out of, the AOR out into the ocean, becomes a Bermuda problem. Others are really focusing on keeping it going towards the west-northwest. And I don't want to... I'm just going to click on it here. This here is what's screaming at me. This is obviously our ENSO 3-4 index. We're still sitting at as neutral of a pattern as we possibly can. And I even mentioned in my tropical chat this morning that, shucks, looking at the ensembles, like, who ordered 2004? Who pressed the 2004 button? Because this is getting a little spooky. Because as you can see, and even on the Canadian ensembles, I'll show you the Canadians as we go further into the run, or further into the live stream, you can see that the general takeaway, if anything gets strong, it's going to be moving right up towards the mid-Atlantic. It's going to be moving towards the southeast. Our Greater and Lesser Antilles, the Bahamas are going to have to watch. So our forecast for this, we'll call it a test run with this first anomaly, since I know a lot of folks will still sit there and tell me that this isn't supposed to be happening, this is unrealistic. Well, it's happened before, so we got to look at it from all angles. And it's kind of discouraging that, and I messaged this to a couple of my buddies on X, I posted it on my Instagram story as well. I think it's silly to an extent that, with the progression of these forecasts, we start off with our classic GFS phantom hurricanes. And you have everybody mentioning, oh, it's a phantom GFS run, don't pay any attention to it. Then the Canadian model or the Icon comes onto it. Oh, but that's the Icon, that's just the Canadian, they don't know what they're doing, don't pay attention to it. The Euro doesn't have anything. Then the next phase is, oh, well, look, we have a couple of spaghetti models, some probabilities on the European model, but it's such a low signal, it's not going to happen. Then we have all this, and now everyone's out here saying that the European model is unreliable, don't pay any attention to it. Where we gotta find some common ground here, folks, because it's becoming a huge miscommunication. We're really, really blurring the lines. Half the time, if the GFS or any other model is picking up on something, we pay no attention to it. Nobody cares because it's not on the Euro. Then you have the European model picking up on something with lots of agreement, and now all of a sudden the euro doesn't make sense. The euro is being too bullish. The euro is the new GFS. It's like, come on, we're really messing things up here. If we come over to our probabilities on the European model, we are rapidly seeing uptick after uptick consistently. We're not switching back and forth anymore. We're not going back and forth. We're not windshield wipering. We're steadily coming up. Models are not reality. Understood. Yes, I've seen you drop that in the chat a few different times. Models are obviously not reality, but if we wait until reality and ignore the signals, we're putting people in harm's way, especially the Lesser Antilles. So I'm going to brief it as I see it. I'm not going to just ignore it. As the evidence compounds, like I mentioned to you guys with my little courtroom spiel, as the evidence compounds, forecasting confidence should go up. We still have a lot of speculation on the table, obviously. There's a lot of margin of error still, but we need to be looking at every angle of this. We can't just ignore everything because everything is screaming in our faces. These are our 0Z European probabilities. You can see that now, not only do we have over the next 72 hours, chances have really gone up in the Western Caribbean. This is why I'm saying I really do think we're going to see the favorability of 94L start to increase as we go through time. We'll have to continue to monitor, obviously. We're only looking at individual model runs, and we've only had about 36 hours of consistency. But we're seeing a pretty high threshold here, about 80-85% Ensemble member agreement, the blend agreement of tropical depression formation. Down there in the Atlantic, if we switch to 12Z yesterday, you can see not a very dramatic increase. It wasn't an unrealistic increase. You go from 12 hours ago to now, and we're squeaking up the pedestal just a little bit. So again, the Lesser Antilles are the main focus that we need to pay close attention to. Those are the number one. And then from there, we can speculate. But we need to get our Lesser Antilles folks, get their eyes on this. That's why I encourage you guys to hit that like button so we get a lot of people to view this video, spread it around. The Lesser Antilles need to be paying attention because there's something coming, and at this point, we can almost lock that forecast in. You go to 96 hours, and you can see probabilities stay pretty hiked up as that feature crosses the Yucatan, and we're sitting pretty at about 70-75% chance of tropical depression formation at 96 hours. At 120 hours, we're still seeing pretty steady consistency. 144 hours, whatever is down there is crossing Gervais, crossing Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. All of our Windward Islands are going to see something. All the Lesser Antilles at this point. All the Lesser Antilles should be watching this step by step. Definitely right now is the point in time, and I mean seriously. This is a serious recommendation. I'm going to move my camera before the sun glint hits. A serious recommendation for my Lesser Antilles folks. Nobody else. If you want to, absolutely. There's no problem in that. Lesser Antilles, whether you're windward or leeward. Even U.S., British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, you should probably, if you haven't already, started to dust off what your preparation looks like for a tropical cyclone, whether it be a depression that could bring some flooding, elevated winds, all the way up to a tropical storm. You need to be paying close attention now. Beyond that, we're still very skeptical. You go a little bit further, we go to 192 hours out, the probabilities stay fairly elevated that something is going to move into the Eastern Caribbean, and then from then on out, that's when we get all this spreading out. You can see that the blend of models really fans out. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So you come over to our tropical storm probabilities. Tropical storm probabilities are fairly elevated through the Lesser Antilles, the Greater Antilles of Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and then again, we're met with that huge fanning out right as we hit 70 degrees longitude. My buddy Matt F150, if you're in the chat, Matt, he messaged me this morning. We were both on the same wavelength at around 5 a.m. We were looking at our model data. This is also spooky. We have hurricane probabilities on our west and east coast. Don't need to get alarmed. We don't need to get scared. We don't need to freak out. I only bring this up because this is the first time in 2024 where we've had hurricane probabilities, very low hurricane probabilities on the table. You can see at 216 hours, there's our gray shades of bleh, 240 gray shades of bleh, and then it becomes diffuse as it moves around the state of Florida. right there. So again, like I've been trying to mention to you guys, for the folks who still haven't bought into it, we're seeing it now. There's your 70-degree latitude line, your 65-degree, or longitude, I'm sorry, your 65, 70-degree west longitude line. We're seeing that fanning out. Before that, east of that longitude line, we're pretty locked in at this point. But it's very eerie to see that we're starting to see our hurricane probabilities perking up on the European ensembles. This is the blend of ensemble members, so we'll definitely need to pay close attention to this. And then here's a look at our spaghetti plots. We're really locked in, guys. The Lesser Antilles, like I said, I say that with the utmost confidence, and I say it with the most positive and peaceful of, reminders. Lesser Antilles, we need to start looking at prep. We need to start prepping. We need to start looking at this because this is our 6Z European ensembles. Something is coming in. We have a really good consensus across the board, all the way. Something is coming in, and what's a little eerie about this is we have anything from a mid-grade tropical storm up to a Category 1 hurricane coming in. So we need to start preparing for the maximum a high-end tropical storm. We're going to find the middle ground. We're not going to say a hurricane is coming, prepare for it. We're not going to say it's not coming. Prepare for a storm is all I'm going to say. This is 6Z for sure. If you look back at 0Z, 06Z has right about the same general consensus, and then we really spread out. And that's some wild anomalies, guys. We have a lot of members in there. We have about maybe 1/4, if not 1/3 of our European ensemble members picking up on a pretty decently structured storm. If we go, this is what I wanted to show you guys. If we go back to the 24th, massive difference. That's why the title of the video is the way that it is. If you guys are wondering, noticeable swings. Well, what does he mean swings could change everything? Is this hype? Well, if you look at 24th at 12Z, if we go back about 36 hours, look at the difference in our ensembles. This was 36 hours ago. You can see our outliers were actually moving west. Our outliers were the westward track. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One little weak sixth member in there that brings it west. Then the general takeaway, all of our ensembles were thinking out to sea fish storm. If you swap back over to this morning, very big difference. Very big difference. And we've seen a noticeable uptick in our ensembles calling for something fairly organized. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Actually, ignore those last two. I'm sorry. Ignore those last two. Those are from 94L. So we have about maybe 1/3, if not, we'll go ahead and be a little more conservative and say 1/4 of our members are calling for a high TS or a Cat 1 hurricane at this point. Right in through there. And again, to tie it into a wonderful bundle, this is what we've been talking about for an extended period of time. We're getting a nice little test run right here as to whether or not 2024 is going to give us a more or less 2017/2004 look to it. We're starting to see it. Lesser Antilles, Greater Antilles need to really be paying attention, and then everybody out here, again, we got to remember the margin of error here. 100% chance at this point we're going to get tropical impacts in the Lesser Antilles. Out here, we drop it to about 70. We'll say 50 to 70% chance. Out here, we're looking at a 10 to 15% chance. So very low possibilities mainland U.S. is going to see anything. We're at about a 50-50 toss-up at this point that our Greater Antilles are going to see something, but the Lesser Antilles definitely need to be paying close attention. That's the number one. That's the number one. I've also been looking at this. I've been looking at Hurricane Elsa. There's a lot of people out there bringing this up as a wonderful analog for what we have going on right now, and it's very interesting to kind of look at. We're seeing a lot of very similar trends. Elsa was the earliest fifth named storm on record as of the end of 2021 hurricane season. Areas along the west coast of Florida experienced as much as 2 to 3 feet of storm surge, 6 to 10 inches of rain, blah, 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 blah. It made landfall around as a tropical storm July 7th. Pretty solid analog right here. So, pretty solid analog. And if you look at the history and you look at the track, we're seeing some pretty decent comparisons here. We're seeing some fairly decent storm to storm, etc. So, Non-tropical storm Elsa. What are you talking about? Non-tropical storm Elsa. It's right here. If you look at the timestamps down here, I know we're looping through fairly quickly, but we're fairly neck and neck with what it is that we're seeing currently on the National Hurricane Center's homepage. Today is June 26th. If you come back to the record, the archive here, this is June 29th, 2021. I have the overall breakdown pulled up, and I've been very, very slowly reading through it. I haven't had a lot of time because, like I said, I rushed in, had to get cleaned up very quickly to get on live stream with you guys. But if you notice here, very, very similar trends. And obviously, I'm not automatically saying we're going to get a repeat. I don't want to insult you all's intelligence, but I want to spell it out for folks who may want to try to attack. I'm not saying that this is going to be a storm-to-storm mirror image, but we at least have a decent analog to look at to draw comparisons from. And it also does mention here, the genesis of Elsa was not well anticipated. The potential of tropical cyclone formation was first noted on the TWO at 12Z on the 29th with a very low, below 40% chance development over the next 5 days. We might just be getting caught with our pants down, or the National Hurricane Center will be bringing this up as we get through the afternoon and evening hours of today. But we're seeing some very, very similar trends. If you read their archive discussion, and I can link this in the chat if anybody wants. As a matter of fact, I'll just do it anyways. If anybody out there wants to do a little bit of homework with me, I'll link it in the chat so you guys can read through, and you can see that they really had to play catch-up with Tropical Storm and then Hurricane Elsa. But that's neither here nor there. We can go ahead and talk more about that at a later time. Let's get back into the meat and potatoes of everything here. This is our 6 Zulu European model. And if you look first out there over the Caribbean, the European model is thinking over the next 72 hours, we're going to see a little bit more favorability out of 94L before it tries to move over the Yucatan and into the Bay of Campeche. If you look down over the MDR, the European model is expecting some sort of consolidation over the next 48 hours. We already have a closed isobar, area of low pressure starting to form up out there. And if you switch over to our 850 vorticity, there she blows, or there it blows, right there, consolidating up in the MDR between 30 west longitude, 45 west longitude, and to the south of our 10-degree latitude line. That's one of the other key components here. All of our dust, if you look at the anticyclone out here, all of our dust is being pulled off of Africa just to the immediate north of that feature. So these latitude lowriders are definitely trying to stay to the south on that border of the main Saharan dust outbreak. So it might miss it, it might not. I think, truthfully, when we see something trying to come together, this point in its lifespan from here to here is going to tell us everything we need to know about what's going to happen out here. If we see formation as the models are anticipating, and this thing can get its act together fairly well over the next couple of days, we're talking 2 to 4 days maximum before reaching the Lesser Antilles, we'll get a much better idea of what's going to happen beyond that. So now we're getting into the point where we need to watch real time and we need to watch models. I'm going to adjust my camera again. The sun angle is moving. There we go. I keep seeing it slowly moving across the camera, and I don't want the sun blaring into your eyes. So the European model is thinking cyclogenesis here as early as possibly 48 hours from now. 48 hours from now, and then you could see Invest 94L taking on that typical mid-level vorticity icon or vorticity look, and you can kind of see why the models are thinking it's going to move up towards the west-northwest as opposed to escaping out. If we go back to 0Z and you take it through the entirety of the loop, you can see it does make it through the Lesser Antilles and then does, for the most part, wash out, gets wrapped up in like a large upper low or mid-level cyclone out there and gets wrapped and killed. That's the point where it becomes very difficult for this to be tracked. We'll have to watch a couple of different things. I have the Korean model pulled up just for the fun of it, because again, if you guys want to see that all of our models are singing the same tune, even the Korean model, same thing as the Euro. You go out to 48 hours and boom, we're starting to see that low pressure. You go to 72 hours and we probably have a strong wave, if not a tropical depression out there. You go to 96 hours, we're seeing further organization. You go to 144 hours, we've had landfall on our Windward Islands. And then the Korean model tracks it through and has it pulling in to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, I don't know if I believe that point in time. I believe this is where it gets tricky. Because if you look at the flow, we have a lot of our wind flow, a lot of southerly flow out here over the southeast. So we got a lot of lead time. A lot of lead time. The only confident area right now is right here. That's the only area where we're about 70 to 90% of the way to a locked-in forecast. That's why I really encourage viewers in the Lesser Antilles and in Puerto Rico, U.S. British Virgin Islands, to really wake up and start dusting off your preparation plans. After that, we're still at a huge toss-up. We have a number of days, so everybody from the Lesser Antilles and east should really be kind of pumping the gas a little bit. We don't have to put our foot on the accelerator just yet. Hispaniola, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, etc. It's our Lesser Antilles, U.S., British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. I'll say it one last time. The U.S., British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and all of our Lesser Antilles. From Trinidad, Tobago, even as far east as Barbados, all the way up to Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, U.S., British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico should really be watching this. From there, it goes way up into the air, and we don't really want to talk too much about it. This is what could possibly be playing a role in whether or not it survives. So as you can see, what the European Ensemble is thinking is over the next 48 hours, we're going to start to see our trade winds try to weaken a little bit. And if you notice, this lines up really well with what's going on our ensembles. You see down here, or I should say up here, we're looking at weaker than normal mid-level flow. Down here over the extreme southern Caribbean, we're looking at intensified mid-level flow, which could tear the core of this system apart, which is what a lot of our operational models, I think, are still hinting at. If you look up aloft, the wind shear and the upper-level winds are actually fairly favorable out there in the Caribbean. Right now, they're doing pretty good. And you can see as that first system moves in, we're getting a little bit of intensification on the north side of it of our shear because we still have our TUT over the greater Atlantic. I'll expand the AOI a little bit so you guys can see the big picture. There's our TUT extended southwest to northeast out over the Atlantic, but if it continues to move towards the south, it's going to stay in an optimal window for upward vertical motion and instability, and it manages to win the race against our dry air. If you look, we have a lot of really good relative humidity and moisture moving through that area to support cyclogenesis, at least in the moisture department. And then it's back behind that where we get a little bit more of that dry air intrusion. You can see it a little bit more so on the GFS. If I switch over to our 700 to 300 millibar vorticity relative humidity, there goes our storm. We get wrapped up into all of our moisture down there over Central South America and the Caribbean, and then our dry, dusty air comes on in, and that's what could possibly close us down, and we won't see anything else because that's when the dry air really comes in with that eastward push of our Atlantic high pressure. You can see how everything is moving in unison. We're going to see this wander over from its original spot. That pressure gradient, I don't need as big of a pen, that pressure gradient or that contour gradient is going to increase our wind flow in comparison or in relation. The interaction between our Azores high and our Saharan heat low is what's really going to ramp up all that Saharan dust after this is all said and done. Notice this is July 12th. So like I've been saying, from July 4th, the holiday, to July 5th, and then shortly after that, that's when we'll probably see things shut down, and we're going to quiet down a little bit. The big key here, the two keys here, I should say, is what happens during its life cycle here and what do our trade winds look like in the Caribbean. Everyone likes to call it the graveyard. I've never heard that before until just now, but it does make reasonable sense. That's going to be the key here. The big time key. And then obviously what happens up here, because there's been a lot of wiggling and wobbling with our pattern. Most recently, over the last 24 hours, the synoptic scale features coming in off of North America are expected to now ride over the ridge as opposed to weaken the ridge. That's why if we go back to our ensemble members back here, we went from the 24th to where everything was going up and out like so. Even in this model run, not a whole lot of agreement, but still showing a number of ensembles taking a stronger system up and out. The 24th at 12 Zulu, we saw even more out-to-sea storms because of the fact that it was an intensifying system and our weakness in the ridge. And then as early as 0Z yesterday, we started to see that very subtle nudge back towards the west. This is 0Z, still showing something for Bermuda. You go to 12Z, and now we're starting to see that real good push towards the west. Outliers are now out to sea, a lot of westward pull, and then at 0Z last night or this morning, really coming into a bit more of agreement that, yeah. So even the UK model. I'll go over to the UK Met for Scrooge McDuck because I know he really likes to rely on not rely on it, but he likes to take a look at the UK Met. We go to our 850 millibar wind from overnight, cyclogenesis very quickly right there. We're already seeing at 48 to 60 hours out, cyclogenesis in the MDR, and then from there it tracks through, and then we have features out there. But notice that acceleration in our trade wind component as these systems go in there. So that could spell the demise of these features. So we'll definitely see. We will definitely see. Just a fun shout out to the AI European model from last night. AI European model is now really developing 94L in the Bach. And then we also have that approaching tropical depression / weak tropical storm for the Windward Islands and the Lesser Antilles. So just a quick little shout out to the AI European model. Again, all of our models are thinking more or less the same thing. You come over to the Icon at 6Z, there it is. You come over to the GFS at 6Z, same time, there it is. You come over to the European model at 6 Zulu, there it is. You go over to the Canadian model at 0Z, there it is. Just not stamped. There it is. Now it's stamped. So what happens in the early stages of its life cycle will be pivotal from that point on. That's the key takeaway here. The Lesser Antilles, U.S., British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, you guys are the ones who really need to be on guard for this. And everybody thereafter, everybody to the west of those islands should just be paying attention. If you live in Puerto Rico, if you live in the U.S., British Virgin Islands, and I'll even go through the list here. If you live in, like I said, U.S., British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, Barbuda, Antigua, St. Kitts and Nevis, Guadeloupe, Dominica, Martinique, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada, Barbados, everybody out there, just so your island is included, you should be watching. It's game time, more or less, for you guys down there. Confidence over the next 48 hours that at least something is going to develop and impact you is high. From thereafter becomes very foggy. I think the probabilities here do a fantastic job of showing that. We're fairly locked in for the Lesser Antilles, and then after that it gets very diffuse. And that's to be expected. We're already beyond, what is this, the 5 to 7 day mark? We're approaching the 10 to 12 day mark at this point. So it makes sense that our confidence is not going to be as high, but that is a fairly intense signal coming right into the Lesser Antilles. Shinsuke Nakamura, great question. Let's go ahead and go on over to that and take a look real quick. Ocean Heat Suite. I know it's definitely warmer than what it should be, that's for sure. This is more of like an August, September SST ocean heat content pattern out there. So if you look at the SST specifically as of today, yep, it's hot. We already know that. Very hot. More than enough for tropical cyclogenesis. We're sitting right at about, 27 to 28 degrees Charlie across the MDR. Further to the south, it might be hard for you guys to see, but it's a little bit warmer. We can switch over to tropical tidbits so we can get the actual numerical values on the chart. Let's go to the Eastern Atlantic. Does it have the Eastern? Let's go to the North Atlantic then. Yep, so you can see right where that system is moving. 10-degree latitude is right about somewhere in here. That system is expected to hug that latitude line, if not stay just to the south. We're going to be wandering between 27 to 29 degree Charlie temperatures. So that is definitely more of an August, September signal for sure in terms of our ocean surface heat. And then we go back over to our ocean heat content. I lost it. Where did it go? Let me pull it back up, go to the Ocean Heat Suite. Ocean heat content is pretty good. It's pretty optimal. And again, we can actually see it. 10 degrees latitude is right there. So where this system is going to track, especially towards the tail end of cyclogenesis, we're going to be moving over very, very decent water. So the heat is there, the moisture is there, the track is there, which is why everybody in this little box right there should be definitely ready to rock and roll for what's on the horizon over the next 3 to 5 days. And then after that, we're going to have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. We just don't know yet. I know it's rough even for me to tell you guys that, but yeah, right now my confidence is put into our eastern islands. I'm not going to go saying that it will or will not come to South Florida, Tommy. I've seen that you've been kind of more or less spamming that question. Still too far out. I think others have answered you in the chat. I'm not dismissing you. It is something to potentially explore on the low end, but yeah, Hydra 47, I did say Antigua. I'm not too sure why so many deaths in the Riptides. I guess people just really aren't paying attention. Unfortunately, people are just not paying attention. So, Ashton, I think that what's going on is our models are struggling to determine which one is actually going to develop or if they're going to merge together, so we're getting two distinct signals that could end up just being one. We'll have to see. But either way, Wave 1, Wave 2, Wave 75, right now, what the pressing key takeaway here is the Lesser Antilles are going to see tropical cyclone impacts. Intensity is getting dialed in. Intensity is starting to get dialed in. If I go back over to our Ensemble members to show you one more time, the intensity is really starting to dial in, and we're going to lock that forecast down very soon. 6Z, for example, all of our Ensemble members are there. We have maybe a small cluster, 1/6 to 1/7 of our Ensemble members think in tropical depression, maybe low tropical storm. Then a general consensus is a mid-grade tropical storm, with a couple of these bullish Ensemble members pointed towards the Lesser Antilles being approaching hurricane strength. So again, confidence is extremely high right here. We can go all the way as high as a 90 to 100% chance of tropical cyclone impacts. Not going to put a conventional name on it. I'm not going to say TS, TD, hurricane. I'm going to say tropical cyclone for the sake of avoiding people saying, oh, but you said this. I'm saying tropical cyclone, and that could be anything from a TD all the way up to a Category 5 hurricane. Let me backpedal on that and say I'm not anticipating a Category 5, but I'm giving you what a tropical cyclone is. So tropical cyclone impacts are definitely almost a guarantee at this point in our Lesser Antilles. And then again, if you live in the U.S., British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, you should have your eyes wide open on this as well. And then from this point and further westward, we get a little confused. We just need to see exactly what's going to take shape. So for my folks out there asking about the Mid-Atlantic, the Gulf Coast, Florida, let's wait. Let's not get into those questions just yet. If you look, as we're on approach, whatever this is moving through the Lesser Antilles, it is July 2nd. It is July 2nd. So it's only the 26th. We still have quite a ways away. This is 5 to 6 days before it's coming through the Lesser Antilles, which means if you kind of extrapolate out, we're still looking at a minimum of 10 days before anything tries to sneak up on our doorstep here in the U.S. So if you're asking about anything from the Gulf Coast, Florida, I'm not dismissing you. I promise I'm not being rude or anything like that. I swear, honest to God, it's not that I don't want to answer you. It's just we're too far out. So let's not worry about this right now. Let's get ahead of the game and get folks warned out there on the immediate horizon on the islands. Like I just said, the Gulf Coast, let's wait. Let's wait. We're not there yet. We're too far out to start speculating. For all we know, at 12 Zulu, we're going to see a huge swing back out to sea, or we're going to see a big breakdown in our models. We don't know yet. Right now, we need to be focusing on who's in the immediate vicinity of whatever this thing is, and those are our Lesser Antilles. Even the ABC Islands should be paying attention just to be on the safe side. Some of our model iterations that do kill this thing off and keep it going west do have it coming very close to the ABC Islands. So I'll highlight in yellow here that if you live in this box, you should probably be really getting ready to start prepping. And as Tom Terry would say, hunker down and let's see what's going to happen and ride this out. Can you do a wave height check for it? Let's take a look. Let's go back to actually, let's look at the parameters. I know that I scroll down to the bottom. We can look at our wave heights, significant waves. Let's go down to the Euro. We'll go to the Caribbean. And let's take a look. So yeah, wave heights are definitely getting up there on 6Z. I don't think we're going to go out very far, though. I think we're still too far away to adequately see. Let's take a look at 0Z. 0Z goes a little bit farther than that. So wave heights, you can see that we have a strengthening system coming in. Right now, the European model as of 0Z is looking for 10 to 12-foot swells. 10 to 12-foot swells. These are wave heights, not to be confused with storm surge. Storm surge is the actual rising of the water, not associated with the waves or the wind or anything like that. There's different components to storm surge. This is going to be just wave heights for the Lesser Antilles, and this is on Tuesday. So right now, it's the 26th of June. Let me look at the calendar real quick. I'm not privy to how many days in June. 30 days. So we got about 4 or 5 days. Yeah, Thea, I know. That's why I've been mentioning to you on WhatsApp that we got to start paying attention. Hopefully this is another false alarm like last year. I remember last year we had that random phantom run of the Euro going Category 5 for Tammy, which was bizarre. It was crazy. But we're seeing a little too much consistency in the models run to run. Like, we're looking very consistent. Where we lose that consistency is right here. That's where we lose that consistency big time. But we're looking at a general consensus at this point to where we can start drawing faithful conclusions for the islands out there. Forecast for Belize. Belize, you're going to be coming under the gun for some potential weak tropical impacts as well with that 94L coming in. We'll go over to the Euro once again, and we'll switch the significant wave height. We'll just go ahead and look at, let's look at our 6-hour precipitation. So there you go for Belize, right in through here, eastern Yucatan Peninsula, down towards Belize here. Still looking at a potentially sheared storm, but quite the hefty rainfall totals. This is going to be 6-hour totals. 6-hour totals. And as you can see, we see within 6 hours, some areas close to Belize in the Yucatan Peninsula getting about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rainfall in 6 hours. So definitely plan for some potential localized flooding, very heavy rainfall in short bouts, especially with the stronger convection, stronger thunderstorms with this. Probably some embedded winds as well before that can kick out over your AOR. Looks like there's some residual impacts expected. And then you can see that the rainfall becomes very, very hard to track with the 0Z Euro with that other feature. Like I said, we're locked in for the Lesser Antilles, but then once we get into that Central Caribbean, it becomes very, very difficult. Very difficult. I can show you guys the GFS and zoom on in down there at 0Z. 0Z broke X is what I read online when I woke up this morning. The 0Z model broke the social medias. If you look, the GFS is going for a full-fledged hurricane going into the Lesser Antilles, and then, believe it or not, it actually keeps it going. It's hard to pick up, but it almost follows an Elsa 2.0 track. It's weak, but it's right there. It follows a track like this and comes right up the west coast of Florida. If I switch over to the vorticity, you can see it a little bit better right there, coming up and pulling in. So technically speaking, the GFS does at 0Z carry it all the way through to a landfall, but the land interaction is too much for it to hold itself together. Hispaniola has a lot of mountains on it. Cuba, the central portions of Cuba have quite a bit of higher terrain on there. Jamaica could play a role in its southern extent, so we definitely have to watch. I am stupid, but difference between cyclone and tropical depression? Well, Sharon, that doesn't make you stupid. Cyclone is just the general title. Cyclone could be anything, a low pressure, a tropical depression, a tropical storm, a hurricane. That's why I use the term tropical cyclone when describing what we should be prepared for, because intensity is always difficult to nail down within 24 to 48 hours out. This far out to where we're still 4 to 5 days away, we got to wait and see in terms of forecast strength. The track is just about locked in. The intensity is still there's still a bit of ambiguity there. That's why I use the term prep for a tropical cyclone. I don't want to start characterizing it and titling it because even National Hurricane Center in their current outlook still has development fairly low, but I do forecast that will go up. We have too many models sounding alarm bells for it to stay down in the yellow. And then, yes, Rain Man is answering your question. A tropical depression is an area of organized low pressure with some slow spin to it that is expected to develop, or maybe not. It's a fairly disorganized area of tropical low pressure. That's the difference. Tropical cyclone is all-encompassing. Then you have your different classifications. Tropical depression, winds of upwards of 38 miles an hour. Tropical storm, 39 miles an hour to 73 miles an hour. And then a hurricane starts when you have sustained winds of 74 miles an hour. Sig Grizzler, I beg to differ. The track is definitely locked in. For our Lesser Antilles out there, we're locked in. We're definitely locked in. We're pretty close to confident at this point. It's beyond that. If you've been paying attention, I've said it gets gray. The Lesser Antilles, I'm going to say it for probably the 50th time. The Lesser Antilles, the U.S., British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, we're pretty locked in at this point that you need to be exploring the threat of tropical cyclone impacts. After that is when it becomes very difficult to track. I've said it a bunch of times. Sig Grizzler, I'm not saying the track is locked in all the way through. I've been distinctly saying, for the sake of avoiding being blown up by you guys in the comments, Puerto Rico, the United States Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, and the Lesser Antilles need to be on alert at this point. We need to be making a check over. We need to be looking over what we have in the house and what we can gather over the next 24 hours, just to be on the safe side. After that, difficult, way too difficult. And yes, now that I agree with. I'll give that for them, but beyond that, no, I definitely agree. That's when it gets very difficult. Our operational models are not in agreement with our ensembles. There's a lot of discontinuity. Once you get past that point here, we're not locked in at all. Down here is where it's a struggle. Down here is, now I'm over here messing up. Down here in this box, that's where we're just about locked in. Out here, further west, that's where it gets a lot more difficult. But that's all she wrote. We're not going to continue to repeat ourselves. In conclusion, like the title of the video suggests, we've seen some pretty wide swings in our ensembles, and I'm sure other sources out there will agree with me. I'm sure you'll be hearing all the other big pages that folks trust mentioning the Lesser Antilles need to be paying attention. Sample Man, again, with Belize and the Yucatan, Central America, absolutely also need to be exploring the potential for tropical cyclone impacts. We have 2 players on the board right now, folks, and that's going to be what we need to watch closely as we round out this exciting period of tropical activity. Then we're going to calm down. I'm fully on board with that. We're definitely going to calm down, and then towards the back end of July is when we're going to ramp back up again, and I think that's when we're going to put the pedal to the metal, and the tropics are going to show us what 2024 is really made of. If we look at the GFS long-range ensembles from yesterday and you take a look at our ensemble members, you can see that we have our first couple of areas right there. You can see the ensembles lighten up big time, and then after that, nothing. All through July, nothing. And then finally, as we get towards the very tail end, there we go. Look at, I haven't looked at that, but then, shoot. Again, the tail end of July. I think the last week and a half of July is when we're going to come back to work on the tropics. I really do think that for all intents and purposes, we could technically go on vacation and not worry about the tropics for a while. There it is. Hey, yeah, look at that signal, guys. So yeah, even the European velocity anomalies are pretty steadfast that 30 days from now, look at the timestamp, right about 30 days from now, give or take, after we get through this area of activity, after we get through this final hoorah for June and the 4th of July, then when we come back 30 days from now, when we do our tropical update 30 days from now, we're really going to have to start watching again. That's when we're going to have to put the pedal to the metal again. So we just got to ride out what's going to happen over the next 7 to 10 days. We all get a nice reprieve, and then it's back to business. So yeah, that's it, guys. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping the live stream. I will also throw out the disclaimer. We have a lot of people watching this morning. I know that my family and school and work is not going to like this, but if we do start to see some development out there, if we start to see even bigger trends, even more signals popping off, we might just explore doing more discussions. We might do 2 live streams, might do more live streams. For the day today, we're probably going to call this the one and done. I'll let the other sources kind of have their fun, do their afternoon and evening updates as well, just to keep that circulation of information going, get all that information out to you guys, because that's what really matters most. But if over the next 24 and 48 hours and into this weekend, we really start to see things gathering up, things developing, a more consistent path ahead or plan of attack with these systems, we might just double down on our updates, do a morning and an evening live stream. Start kind of doing like weather center shifts, if you will, just because I want to keep you guys in the loop. And I know that there's a lot of really big pages out there with tons of subs, tons of viewers who don't do the discussions, who don't do the live continuing coverage. And I promised you guys, even before this hurricane season, that I'd be there for you. So as much as people grit their teeth and get mad at me for sitting at the desk and watching this stuff, I'm willing to do that for you guys. So if you have any additional questions or comments or concerns, please drop them in the comments section of this live stream. Drop me a line on my private social media platforms, X, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm a lot more active on there, although I know that I've been kind of slacking on TikTok, to tell you the truth. I've been focusing on this YouTube content, and then I'm educationally and mentally exhausted for, later in the day. Maybe I should start doing all my content in the morning when I have more brain power and more brain waves to give to you guys. So, yeah, the conclusion again, Lesser Antilles, U.S. British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, we got to start getting ready to hunker down, as Chief Meteorologist Tom Terry says. From there out, after that, we just don't know yet. Lots of signals, lots of what-ifs, lots of rampant solutions, lots of good solutions, lots of not-so-good solutions, but after those first island nations see whatever they're going to see, that's when, for now, it just doesn't look very confident. We still have a long way to go with this. So please keep in the loop. Nudge that like button. I do appreciate the 100 some odd likes we've already gotten. We've had a wonderful audience in here this morning. Let's keep nudging that like button even after the fact. If you managed to make it this far, rewatching after this live stream has come and gone, feel free to drop a like, drop a subscribe. Please turn on the notifications. Sharon, no, there is no stupid question, regardless of you or anybody else. That's what I'm here for. There is no such thing as a stupid question. As cliche as that phrase is, it really isn't. At this point, that's why I like to do these live streams when we have pressing weather information, because I want to answer those questions to the best of my ability. It could be something so basic to very high-end thinking, and I'm going to try to answer it the best that I can. So please don't say that. Don't put yourself on blast like that. It is not a stupid question. And yeah, I got your guys' back. Probably won't be back tonight unless there's something really big that ramps up. We would need like breaking news to get me back in the desk tonight. I also have an exam to take today. I put the exam off so I can go live today. So I got to do that this evening, but that's neither here nor there. That's just stuff I have to take care of in the background, and I will take care of in the background. But, take him off you live, my friend, Boutique. Huh? Nick, anything on the horizon for Florida? So technically, you could make a case that Florida is on the radar. I mean, if you look back at the ensembles here, the long-range ensembles, you can definitely make a case that Florida is on the radar, but not confident. Definitely not confident. And I know, guys, that Florida gets split in half right there. We have ensembles east and we have ensembles west, but don't pay attention to the single lines. These single lines have so much variability with it. These single lines, they want to tell us where the general flow is and the general intensity. You don't want to fixate on the individual little lines. They're definitely going to change. So I would say if that storm survives, then everybody out here is on the table. So that's it. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We're going to go ahead and close out the live stream. Again, please make sure to nudge that like button. Let's get those likes up, guys. I genuinely appreciate all your support. I'm so thankful that this channel is gaining momentum once again, and I'm very grateful that we actually have pressing things to talk about so I can stretch my forecaster legs and get you guys as much of the information in a timely manner as possible. We'll see you again very soon. Please, again, if you have any continuing questions, drop them in the comment section. Always get back to everybody, or drop me a private message on Instagram, X, or TikTok. I'll definitely get back to you as well. Real quick, can I see the what-ifs for the tracks of that one storm? This is it right here. These are the what-ifs right here. So, clear westward trend. And that's why, again, the title of the video is at what it is. Noticeable swings, because we did see a swing. We saw a swing. We went from out here to over here. So a very big swing. We had one solution, and now we're at two. So we swung west, and we don't like when things swing west. Things, when they swing west, that means there's more people in the line of fire. It's like bowling pins at that point. So we'll just keep you ahead of the storm. We'll keep watching. So yeah, guys, we'll see you again soon. If anything, like I said, if anything crazy does happen, we'll be back. But just don't plan on it for now. We don't know what's going to happen at 12Z. We'll have to see what happens at 12Z, and we'll talk more about that at a later time. But until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.